there's a Reaper there, so they're being pressured out of the spot that they want to be in. It depends. If they're playing on point, it's better for a Reaper because you as a team reduce your distance between you and the enemy even further. Because if they're playing on point, then they're just playing over there, and all you need is one speed boost, and then you're already in on them. Whereas if they know what you're doing there, and then they go position themselves on the high ground, then a McCree has a better time of it because he can actually get value at this distance. So then, with those two comps, you can then further go and say, okay, well with a Reaper comp you can still get value because you push under and then you push them off high ground. Like that. Or with a McCree comp you can sustain better on point because he's taking shots and getting damage off, and then he's got stun for people that drop to point. But then you can swap that around and also say that a Reaper can work well on point because you hide under this area, taking point, Reaper shooting up. And McCree running through here doesn't really work as well, but you can still do that as well. It depends how you want to play it. But the little micro plays matter when it comes to once you've chosen your base comp, the micros make the difference in how you play the comp from then on, or where you've got your every comp's got positives and negatives to it, and what matters is how you exploit your positives and exploit the enemy team's negatives. Because then at some point during that, you might be playing with the Reaper or the McCree and think, oh, that's not working, let's swap up the playstyle. You can easily do that just by swapping that one hero, and then you completely change how that comp is played. Still going the same direction, but you might play quicker, you might play slower, you might play more cautiously, you might play more aggressively. So, depends how you want to do it. So, Brawl's kind of normal on this point. Yeah, I think to help you with making comps, we'll probably stick to some standard comp designs. So you can play the BAP if you want. It's a good thing because he's strong. It's easier to play the Moira or the Ana. So up to you whether you want to do that or aim to play a BAP later on after you've perfected the... I'm sure that you actually play well, and it's more a case of like creating the comp in the first place. But yeah, you can just come out on the Moira or the Ana, and it simplifies it a little bit more, because even with a BAP, you play slightly different. You probably play a little less aggressive than with a Moira, because Moira gets sustained longevity healing, whereas a BAP's small burst and then lamp. So with a BAP, you probably want to play a bit more cautiously and choose your engages more wiser than a Moira, where you just charge all in, get the Moira loads of ult charge, get a coalescence, all that sort of stuff. Window doesn't matter as much. So the lamp is what makes BAP pretty much. You can do it the same way as BAP as well though. Depends how you want to play it. So standard Brawl, back to that. Yeah, let's go second actually. Let's go second, because you've got that. So you've got DPS as swaps. In most standard comps, you very rarely swap out the main support and the main tank. And the proj, really. Sometimes you swap the proj, but you don't really swap the proj a lot. It's a Mei in Brawl, almost always, pretty much always actually. Even in maps like Control Center and Lijiang, it's often played junk Mei, because Mei is a standard part of a Brawl comp. So yeah, I would say in any standard comp that you learn and want to play, it's the main tank, the proj, and the main support that make up the core of that comp. So that might help with creating comps as well. How do they play together? Where you've got a Rhine, let's think of King's Row Brawl, you've got a Rhine, a Mei, and a Lucio. Fundamentally, those three work perfectly for what you want to do. You've got the Rhine for brawl damage and barrier. You've got the Mei for walls to get in close, and you've got the Lucio to facilitate getting in close in the first place. So And then the other things layer on top of that, like a Reaper gets in close because of the Lucio to get huge burst damage. The McCree gets in close because of the Lucio to get fan the hammers, and the stun comes in to a different play, but you can use a stun aggressively if you want. You've got the Moira to sustain the healing, you've got the BAP to sustain the healing, or when the Rhyme's barrier goes down, you've got the Lamp to prevent deaths from a barrier down. You've got a Zarya to bubble to sustain Rhine barrier and to facilitate big swing damage to get shatter. So what matters is mostly the main support, the main tank, and the proj DPS in most of these comps. The same goes for like dive Pharah comps. Your main tank, main support, and proj are a Winston, a Pharah, and a Mercy. Well, your Winston facilitates engages. Your Pharah doesn't work as well. Let's choose Lucio, and let's choose old dive. So, what was old dive? Mercy and Genji. So Winston, Mercy, Genji. The Winston dives. The Genji can hit that target fast. So hit the same target. The Mercy sustains for early damage and heals. So and because of how dive works around that, the Mercy gets more value because players are often in different areas. So like you've got a Tracer blinking around, so the Mercy can move around between them. Sometimes you have a Widow, so the Mercy has a home base to go to, knowing where the Widow is, so that she can disengage easily. That's when you swap hit scans. What else facilitates? So the Winston, Genji, Mercy damage dive. Zen facilitates that well because of this is very old comp. It doesn't really work as well anymore. But if it works, a good team will make it work because the Discord facilitates more damage on that dive target, the one target they've chosen to dive. In a bunker comp, you've got Orisa, a little less definite, but Orisa BAP definitely. What's a normal proj hero? Hanzo, Junk. What else works in bunker? Who am I missing? What heroes am I missing? I'm going back to spawn. Anyway, before I decide on that, does that make sense? If you get the fundamentals down of like how those comps work, it should be easier to get the extra heroes to go with that. So with the dive, you've got D.Va because out of the other tanks, other than maybe a Bull, the Bull I would forget about because he facilitates a completely different way of playstyle. We'll do the core 3 playstyles for Overwatch. The D.Va obviously adds boosters and high burst damage, so she can facilitate good dives with the Winston. It's a good pair for the Winston. She has DM for the Winston. So yeah. Who else? Tracer can blink and dive. Echo probably works well with that comp now. She can dive equally well. A Sombra even works well for that comp because you hack the target that's being called to facilitate the success of those dive heroes, the Winston, the Genji, and the Mercy to get good value. Yeah, the other supports don't work as well. Anna you could play to sustain Winston and for Nano to keep Winston up on the dive. But yeah, proj for bunker. I guess you play Echo more now. But let's use... There's different things you can play. You play Echo, Hanzo, Junkrat, sometimes May, Torbjorn. I'm going to say for all of those proj heroes though, the core way that bunker is played is sustain. So you've got the Orisa and the BAP sustain. Counter damage sustain, so regular consistent high burst damage, so Echo's high burst, Junk's high burst, Hanzo's high burst, even Torbjorn's quite high burst, so barrier kill, and to force abilities out. What else was I going to say? Oh, and then to pair with the most strong part of a bunker comp, which is the Holt. So Orisa's calling her Holts. With that Holt comes uh, uh, Holt Dragons, Holt Headshots from Hanzo, his Storm Arrow, Echo, her Sticky Bombs, Torbjorn with Core, with his Overload, getting big damage, with Junk, obviously, tons of damage with Junk, with Tyre, those fundamentally work well together. And then the other heroes that work with that, where you've got Sigma for Holt Rock, Sigma for Holt his ult, whatever it's called, Holt Flux, Hog for Holt Hook. So the off tank's there to facilitate more value out of the main tank, basically. So even a Bull for Holt Slams. And then what else works with that? Well, with BAP, you've got, let's say, the heroes you can play with that BAP in that brawl, in that bunker are Anna, Brig, maybe Mercy. Let's forget about Mercy. Not Moira, because you've already got enough sustain healing from the BAP and the lamp for save potential. Or weak save potential. You want something that's gonna get more damage out. So I would say an Anna or a Zen, or to play a completely different playstyle, put in a Brig and then just be anti-dive. So have high stun. So your other heroes might be Brig, McCree for high stun, rather than high burst damage. McCree's got decent high burst damage anyway, though. But you get what I mean. Whereas a Zen has very high burst damage. He's got the Discord, so it plays slightly differently. You want to put your opponents more on the back foot with a Zen bunker comp than with a Brig bunker comp. If you don't get value off of your Zen earlier in the fight, then you might as well be playing a Brig, because the Brig's there for whip shots, for stuns, for heals, for rally. Whereas a Zen gets most of his value at the range point. So getting a Discord on early, getting lots of burst damage into that, getting the Holt in, and then by that point the enemy's lost too many heroes, lost too many abilities to sustain themselves well in that fight. Whereas the bunker Brig comp, you're kind of baiting them into jumping you so that you can stun them out, take abilities off of them, and then win out a sustained fight. So yeah, I kind of gone over the core comp. So yeah, there's Ryan Zarya. The other thing with Brawl is, for any high ground, that's why I brought us here, finally. With any Brawl comps, this point, deceivingly decent Brawl map, like per point, either you're rolling off of first, or you can continue it, but swapping a D.Va in here is a good choice. Because if you're playing Brawl v Brawl, even swapping a D.Va for potential eats, like you should be playing against a main Zarya, that's two huge eat things, and it's not hugely difficult to eat those, as long as the D.Va's conscious and looking out for it, and has the DM for it. But it's mostly the high ground. So this map, Numbani, if you were to... Probably not the best idea to Brawl Numbani, but Numbani, you'd probably want to play a D.Va Brawl. What other maps are there? What's it called? Dorado, D.Va Brawl, if you were to play Brawl. I can't think of other ones. But basically, the common ground between these points that I've chosen is that there is a lot of high ground potential. Whereas whether you are taking advantage of it yourselves, so the D.Va being able to get there early and force people off high ground, or whether the enemy are taking advantage of it, so your D.Va being able to use DM to get high value out of the enemy, like they're playing a bunker long range spam, well, Zarya is not going to do very well against that. A D.Va will do a much better job. So you choose when you're going to do an engage. D.Va goes in DMs, takes value out of the DPSing, and then your Brawl does better because the Ryan was able to get closer earlier rather than with the Zarya. The Zarya bubble goes down very quickly. So yeah, if I go back to the spawn, yeah, there's not really much else you can play. Fundamentally, like obviously if you really want to, you could play Rhine, Orisa. It's not bad. Rhine, D.Va's not bad. But then the careful with Rhine Orisa though, because Rhine's actually the off tank in Rhine Orisa, so let's forget about that. you don't really play Brawl. Rhino Reset. Rhyme would be in the bunker of that, basically. So yeah, it's Rhine, Zarya traditionally, Rhine Diva for alternative comp, so with high grounds. For dive, Winston, Diva, traditionally, I'm going to say, double bubble, so Winston Zarya works for that. Similar idea, like it's dive engage, but it's played slightly differently, so it's not all hard engage all at once. It's pushing people off high grounds, and you probably want to do that with dive anyway, but it's not as gung-ho, like all in, all out, which traditional dive was. You take spaces, double bubble, you get your Zarya to high charge, you get your Zarya up on her ultimates, facilitate Winston to move, get ult charge, all of that sort of stuff. And then for bunker, it's traditionally Orisa Sig because of Orisa's low barrier health. The Sig traditionally plays well in blocking for the Orisa, but then you also play off angle, so the better way of playing bunker is playing the off angle Sig. So it was for a time Sig, Ashe, Mercy, so that the Sig and the Ashe and the Mercy stick together and get off angle damage. But then with the Orisa, you can also play a Diva, you can also play a Hog. It all comes down to map specific. So you're either playing the traditional way of playing it, like with traditional heroes, or you are playing with a different off tank because there's something on the map or there's something in the team that makes that work better. So Ilios the Hog, any comp or any map where you could be playing bunker but there's high ground potential, you can swap in a Diva. Doesn't mean it's better, but if that's what you choose, you will be getting more value off of it. Like Sig can't make those high distances, whereas a Diva can. So maybe you've chosen for that reason, because of that map, that's going to work better for you, and then you take advantage of it because of the map. You can always play maps or comps that don't work as well on maps because of how the team plays, but it's not because of how the map lends itself to it. It's because the teams played well together. So yeah, I guess I haven't really gone over the map. Does that all make sense?
Yeah.
Does that help at all with like making comms?
A little bit, yeah.
So obviously you can aspire and try and really go for wacky comps and things that you think will work, and making up comps and seeing how those go, or making up comps that work for the team, like Clockwork Vendetta, just playing the heroes that work and creating strats around that. You can do that. I think it's probably better if you're struggling to make comps right now is to go for one of those three. I don't think we're playing much Bull, are we? So go for one of those three fundamental comps. Decide what works best for the map. So like attack on this map second. You could play Brawl first. Brawl works probably the best on first, but you might want to play Dive because Dive is better on second. But then you might want to play Brawl and try and roll Brawl because Brawl is best on third. So you kind of have to make decisions based on, are we going to be able to sustain good ult management all the way to third point? Is it worth playing the Brawl from the beginning, or do we play what we think's best? So for second, because second might be our worst point of the three, so then you play Dive out of the gates because Dive is better on second. So it's not easy, but you just choose what you think will work on the map, and then it's good to know what is the second best thing to play, because then you can always swap to it, because often second best thing to play is wildly different to the playstyle of the first thing you played. So the enemy's used to you playing that first thing, you're getting rolled on it, or you're not playing as well on it as you should be, or as you'd like to be. So whipping out that second thing, the enemy has to take a bit of time, whether it's 5 seconds or 5 minutes. They have to work out how they're going to deal with it now, because it's changed. They're not used to it coming out of you as a team. So knowing that as well, mid-map swaps, is something going wrong? Do we need to make swaps? Do you need to change the whole comp, or is it an element that needs to be changed? Is there someone who feels like they're not getting as much value? So knowing what, for example, like if you're if your Mei feels like she's not getting enough value, and it's second point, it's very normal to be a Mei and not feel like you're getting enough value. But you still want to play Brawl, then a good swap would be Hanzo because he has the long distance spam. Because this map's a long range map, depending on where the enemy plays, the wall potential you get might not be as good as the spam value that you get out of the Hanzo. And then if the Hanzo charges his ult quick enough, then you have things like grab dragons and stuff like that. Or what works well with probably a better version of wall, not as good. There's a reason why you don't play Hanzo straight off the bat. But a better version of wall that he gets every 1 to 2 minutes is his dragons. So like it does the exact same job, splitting off teams and does damage, and using that instead of going for the wall. So then that way you might have a particular area of the map that you want to choke out with the dragons. So say it's this last area here, and you shoot the dragons this way. How would you want to do it? Shoot the dragons this way to split off whoever's playing here, and then whoever's playing back there. Here on the team, but earlier in the map, like over here, this area lends itself better to a Hanzo because you can take high grounds, or you can run with the group and then spam damage here because it's longer range distance, and you aren't going to get value off of the Mei walls. You probably will. It's really not that bad map for Mei walls, but the height allows the enemy to get an advantage on you. Like say they're playing spammy stuff and you still want to play Brawl, but they're playing on the high grounds, they've got Ashe and whatever, the Hanzo might be able to get picks on it, or at least apply pressure. So yeah, knowing what to change for that, those individual players should know what they should be able to get value on. So they should be suggesting, and then you should be saying yes or no to that. What was I going to say? I can't remember. Does that make sense? Have I glossed over anything, or am I doing well?
No, it's fine. Yeah, I get it.
Is it useful? So, I think I'm talking a lot of hypotheticals rather than saying like you should play this here because this. So like, but then that's just Overwatch. Yeah. So to help you. You want to you're in the lobby and you see the lobby leader pick the next map and you see it's if I were a shot caller or if I was the comp maker for that map, how would I do it? Random map. Give me a random map.
Eichenwald.
Eichenwald. Okay. So instantly you should be thinking about what plays well on that comp, what plays less well on that comp, what plays well for the team. What do we expect the other team to be playing? Let's say it's first map, so you don't expect the other team to be playing anything. You don't have any intel on them. You've got on attack, first choke. So I know that all three styles of Overwatch can be played on that map, on that first choke, but they have different playstyles. So you've got, and they have different areas of the point of that point area where they excel. So you've got the Brawl, standard Brawl on that map with the Mei. Let's just say standard Brawl. The point where it excels is that first choke area, being able to get through that choke in the early 30 seconds of the game, get walls up, get value off on the enemy before they hit point. That works well, and even on point it excels too. Less so with the Mei, but the point's quite a small point, so you can move around quickly with the Lucio speed, with the Lucio boosts, and or just even passive speeds. So I would expect that to be a very strong contender for the best comp for that. So I would be thinking Ryan, Zarya. I'll do it this way actually. Ryan, Zarya, Lucio, Ana or Moira for the long range, for like the pushing distance, and DPS, Mei, Reaper or McCree. Let's go with McCree. Reaper plays well. If you're a good Brawl team and you play all together, Reaper's good though, because you use the element of surprise. Although that long range area from the very beginning, maybe you want a McCree to spam out a bit. So yeah, that would be what I would go with. Other comps that work, you've got Winston, so a dive, I would say this is the second best. On any point, you can play an attack. What do you call it? An attack bunker. I don't think it's probably the best thing to do. Also, your main tanks probably don't want to be playing Orisa the whole game, so attack bunkers work. We can maybe go over those at a different day. They're also a little bit out of fashion now, but they still work. So yeah, I'd say second comp is a dive. So Winston, D.Va, or Zarya. Probably a Zarya works better because of the lack of high ground area on that first point. D.Va lends itself better to second point, but then maybe Zarya lends itself better to second point because of the bubbles to give the Winston more pressure on those high grounds. But then D.Va can make those high grounds with boosters, so it's like you've got to weigh up these things. So yeah, you've got dive on that. Let's just say traditional dive. So talk about Pharah. So Pharah works well in that for the bits that she can fly over at the beginning. So to get early flank pressure. I think Genji can make that jump as well. So again, it's hard talking about dive without mentioning Genji, but then Genji's bad. So let's swap Genji out with Echo. I think they do a similar job, but Echo's just better at it. So yeah, the dive doesn't want to go straight in though on that first area. They want to get through high, so through the mid, through the choke. Maybe they want to run through choke bridge left, so into that little health pack area, so that they're early safe inside the enemy walls. By doing that, they force the enemies to either stay there or rotate towards or rotate onto point. They probably want the enemy to rotate onto point rather than rotate towards. Rotate towards would probably be a good idea, depending on what they're playing. If they're playing bunker, then they probably want to just stay where they are. So they do that. They take that left area on the attack. They then decide to coordinate a dive, so they see that the enemy team's got, say, Bab Zen on high. They've got a full dive, so they make them their target. Maybe not the best target in the world, but they make that's their target, and they've gotten value off of the dive because the dive can make that high ground area. I was talking about the high ground, like it's not a saloon, but it's like a bar area or something, or a lodge at the very end of that point. Or they take space on that left side, and then they choose to dive the tanks or whatever, or take control of the point, and yeah, that's how they do it. It's not as good. Like at that point, the dive does well to get through choke probably faster than the brawl, but on point itself, the brawl probably does better to sustain and get better damage off. Iconworld second. Brawl doesn't do so well compared to a dive. So, but then third, Brawl does obviously is third points on most maps are Brawl points. So on most escort slash you playing the Brawl fine, but then don't decide to just run up mid passively pushing payload. You see the enemy team should be doing this anyway. You see the opportunity to take value on high ground. High ground's always good. So you send the core Brawl up. You might want to swap to a D.Va so that she can sit on payload to push the payload. Or if they're all up there set up already, you leave payload behind and you Brawl them out off of the high ground, or you team wipe them. So that's probably what you want to do, rather than allow them to rather than to do what they want you to do. So they're playing a bunker on that high ground, spamming you out. Do what they want you to do and just sit on payload and wait for the Brawl to come to you. Take their advantage away from them by making what works well with that comp work. So the Brawl works well in close range. Going through the castle onto that high ground, it utilizes King's Row-esque geometry, so lots of close areas, not long range sight lines or anything like that. The longest sight line is running over that bridge to someone who's on the other side of that bridge, but with speed boost, with good coordination, speed boost bubbles, DM if you've chosen to play a D.Va, anything like that, good sustained healing, Ryan putting up his barrier for the majority of the run into run into them. Yeah, that's where that comp will shine, rather than what you would expect. So say like King's Row, it works fine to sit on the payload for King's Row because there's not really any other areas that you need to take advantage of. If there were like second point King's Row attack, there's a big open space in that middle area where the bar is, or where the bit that like Tracers like to hide in with the 200 health pack. If that was a big open area and then like a nice high ground area where the enemy team could set up on, at that point it's the same as Icon World. You either, maybe it would be better to play a dive there, or maybe you want to swap your playstyle and attack them early. It's not even swap your playstyle, that's what you should be doing on Brawl. But attack early rather than push the payload passively, take a load of damage, lose a load of abilities, and then end up getting pressured off of point by the time you get it halfway. Because that's exactly what they want. So that second point, so you want to take high ground early, and then I guess that's shot calling that I'm doing, but it's also comp work because I have seen it happen. I don't know if you would want to do what I just said about taking high ground with Brawl on that second point, but it's also knowing where your comp gets value on particular maps. So yeah, that's high ground, so you might be tempted to play the dive, but there are other ways to play a Brawl there. You can get through castle pretty quick, so yeah, so there's that. Whereas a dive, you probably would want to push the payload somewhat, save abilities, get it to halfway up that first half, and see that they're playing high, bunker or whatever, and then choose and engage on the target and force them off. Oftentimes with the dive as well, or even Brawl, you don't need to go all in and expect picks. You should really, against a good team, just be expecting to get them out of the area you want them to get out of. Because if you think about it, the most vulnerable time when you're playing defense is when your plan hasn't worked, you're on the back foot. All 6 of you are still alive, but you're on the back foot. So your initial plan, it hasn't worked, you're trying to set up in an area that's not as good, and that's because they pressured you out of that area. That's where you feel most vulnerable. You don't feel most vulnerable when you're set up and they're diving you. You feel most vulnerable when you're in a weaker position. So playing things like the dive, the Brawl, it might be worth just pushing them out of their setup area just to put them in a position where they are going to end up weaker and then be more likely to get value off of that fight. Because you can, I don't know, you've got the high grounds, you've gotten them off of the area that they want to be in, then you can choose your engage, and etc, etc. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Yeah. Trying not to be condescending.
No, not at all.
Going
No,
over
just...
what I know and what I would think of. But then that also works with other maps. So you've got what's a good map? Blizzard World is a good one, similar to Second Point Icon World. Second Point Blizzard World. So if we think about, I always reference this, how Brawl used to be played on that map. Not Brawl, how Goats was played on that map. The defenders would hold high, the attackers would leave payload after attacking first, push the defenders off of high, whether that's killing them or getting picks or getting them to back off and get off of high, so that they can then push the payload and play the game in a position where they are at a better, or not at an advantage necessarily, but on a more level playing field to the enemies, because that high ground is good. They can choose, if you don't push them off of there, what they want you to do is just push the payload to that first area where the bridge is, just under, and then they can choose their engage on you because they're at a better advantage. They're looking down, they can get easy spam off on some of the heroes that they want to get abilities out of. They choose the engage. You'd be lucky to win that fight, really, if you just push the payload there. If you were playing the Goats as well. So yeah, it works the same way. So, but if you're playing dive, you probably want to be pushing the if it's not Goats, let's say dive v Brawl. The Brawl's playing on that high ground. You probably want to be pushing the payload, and then because you are able to close that distance quickly, you then choose that rather than walking up and meeting them and not pushing the payload the distance. So because you have more of a opportunity later to take advantage of their positioning. You can then push them off high ground, because that's just how dive works. They'll probably hold their ground. I think a dive would probably win that fight, but yeah, anything could happen. So same goes with this map. This map you should be careful with that. Say they're set up on high ground on second, and you're playing a brawl. A lot of teams will be tempted to meet them on that high ground and run over this bridge. I think it's very risky doing this. But that being said, when you're put in a position where they're playing, I don't know, Mercy Ash, Hanzo, lots of spam, bunker, they've got their Orisa set up somewhere here, a Sig set up somewhere over there, you're playing, or their Orisa backs up over bridge, you're playing just a brawl, moving payload, whatever, you can get spammed out easily. So probably what you want to do is just walk over through the left side, take the TP up, not TP, the elevator up, and then push them off from this side rather than this area. So with comps as well, if that's your scenario, did that scenario make sense?
Yeah.
So if that's your scenario, you're probably better getting making this distance here, because you're playing brawl. You can push the payload so far this way, as long as people get past this area safely. So far this way, hug this wall, keep pushing payload, leave, and then take this area up here. This distance is a lot shorter than this distance. So if you catch them off guard, you've got less chance, and they're still positioned over there, you've got less chance to fuck up your engage as a brawl this way onto a bunker than this way. This way, this is where they want you to be coming from. Either stay down there or to walk across here. Either you play a D.Va and use the whole DM to get across here to be able to engage, so that's one whole ability use, or you're playing a Zarya and then you're managing Rhine barriers and whatever. At the end of the day, if you're making this route, the enemies are getting some value off, if they're playing bunker, like lots of spam, some value off of the your abilities, because you have to close this gap. Yeah, you're going to use speed boost or whatever, as you're expected to. Yeah, from here, you're probably not going to get value off of speed boost. You get heals, so you don't get value off of speed boost because it's not a long distance to move, so you want to be amping heals rather than amping speed. So you use those abilities that you expect to be using, but things like a DM if you're playing D.Va, a bubble if you're playing Zarya, things that you have to use early that you don't have for the rest of the fight, those are the things that matter in that in this fight situation here. So it's about, if you're confident moving this direction. If I had a D.Va, I would be confident moving across this area here. And a D.Va, if I were the D.Va, I'd be confident because I could DM all the damage and then get good burst damage in the brawl itself and force people off the point. Because D.Va's got the boops as well, so your goal might just be to force them off the area, this top area. But then this is a safer attack route. So yeah, there's that. And then if you're playing against a good team and you've decided to do this as your attack route, more likely than not, they've ran over to that other top high ground area. So then what you want to do is have someone moving payload. I think actually, first point, actually D.Va works well in the brawl on first point attack. D.Va works very well on the second point attack. It's probably might be worth just playing D.Va, or if you're playing the Zarya on the first, swap D.Va straight away on the second point. You're more likely to succeed because of the DM potential. No matter how you want to play the attack, but yeah, and also for payload push, she can payload and then in half a second get with the brawl, because if the brawl's up here pushing across high, the D.Va's pushing payload, she can just fly up DM the Rhine across just from the payload. The Zarya can't do that; she has to be with the setup. So yeah, if you're ever playing Hollywood and you're stuck on the attack, because I think that happens a lot. Yeah, if you're playing the brawl, yeah, I just play the D.Va on the second point, or swap completely. But swapping completely is not the best idea because you're T3, you're swapping a whole play style. If you're not practiced enough, it's tough to play that well because you're kind of still stuck thinking about the last play style you're playing, and then you don't adapt well. So yeah, I recommend playing the D.Va on this if you're going to play brawl. Unless you've got graph, but then like it's tempted to just go. either you play this early and then just run through early and grab who respawns or whatever, and then be able to push the whole distance, or yeah, just swap. You don't need that ult. So, and then third point, Diva's actually relatively good on third point as well. But yeah, Zarya is probably better third point. So yeah, it's making those swaps. Those are little micro swaps. If I didn't go over that with the D.Va, does the D.Va stuff make sense on this map? You don't have to do it.
Yeah,
But like,
just we've
if
never really ran a diva. I think we did it once by accident, and it didn't particularly pan out because we've never ran it
Yeah.
before.
because the Rhine has to play differently. You also want to only play D.Va on maps where D.Va works quote unquote better than Azaria. So like Azaria is good on this map if she's not even bad on this map if people position themselves on high ground, like a spam bunker on high ground. But Azaria works really well on this map if you just forget about all of these buildings and it's just played linearly like this. Azaria works really well because there's decent cover. The only bit of poor cover you get is this last area here, and even this you can get good nades from Azaria to get consistent damage from her. Her grabs work well all along that linear line. It's points like this where you have consider, well, realistically the best comp to play on this map is a spam on defense. Whenever you're playing against a brawl as well, like if they're playing a brawl, you've won first, you can just swap to high ground spam on this map and do the exact same thing, just in reverse. So having an attack spam, situating yourselves on high ground, spamming them out, and then dropping point. The only issue is, yeah, you have to move the payload. So again, D.Va works really well for that. So there's all she is. Have you? It's not very old animation. It is an animation of Zen moving a payload. It's on YouTube, viral thing. Have you seen that or not?
I don't think so.
No. So it's like it was a comedy skit animation of Zen pushing payload because that was his job way back when. Realistically, that's a D.Va's job nowadays. Like that is all she's there for, is to allow a brawl to move, to allow people to move, and then for her when she's pushed the payload where she needs to, then to catch up because she's got the fly, she's got the ability to move. It was always Zen because he was slow and had the discord and had long range shots, so he could do that. So yeah. Anyway, yeah, but with those little micro, yeah, I'll call it that. You got your macro. I know I already have. I repeat myself. You got your macro comp choices. So there's one of three, and then your micro comp choices. So where it becomes map specific. So if you wanted to continue the brawl, but where a D.Va is going to help you, because you see on where you just captured first, they're coming out of spawn on second. You go, oh, they're playing Hanzo Ash now, out of nowhere. We're going to struggle to sustain our brawl here without taking high ground early. Let's say you take high ground early, you spot that, and that's good. And you take the high ground away from them before they can even get a value on it, or you play it safe and say, all right, let's swap D.Va, try and shut that down, and then do the rotations. I said, yeah, people get stuck on this map way too easily. People get stuck here because they've got a widow or whatever shooting this long sideline, and you've got like. It's brawl, so you can just do this and run along here, and then pop the barrier up and make sure that everyone survives perfectly. If you want a safer route, you can just get everyone across this choke here, and then run through here, and then run through here. Fucking if I can't run through there, run through here. You got a tiny bit of window here where people can shoot you. Make sure everyone gets across safely, and then you're back behind here. So it's like. It's a long route to take, but if you want to keep playing Brawl on there, you've got to think, well, they've got an advantage on comp. They've got an advantage with how the map plays. I want to stay Brawl because I know I can make it work on this point, and it works well for third. What am I going to do? Am I going to play Brawl how Brawl works on King's Row? Am I going to play Brawl how Brawl can work on this map? You want to play Brawl how Brawl can work on this map, so you play Brawl in the way that you take advantage of the things Brawl works with. So the cover, the speeding across short open distances, getting close to the enemy, all that sort of stuff. So that works with like every map. Yeah, so it's making a comp starts with analyzing how a comp works well on that map. With the Brig stuff, the Brig Bap stuff with Brawl, I would drop it for now. Unless if you're playing things like, let's say it's Icon World Defense, works well on Icon World Defense Brawl. You just play in the defense area on point, and you brawl on point, and you've got your bat brig set up in that back area or on the high ground. You choose your engagers based on that. The bat brig only works when you. It probably works even better on 2CP when you really don't have to move around a lot. On that Icon World first defense, it's great until it's not, and you lose, and then you're on second point, and now you actually need a bit of movement to be able to meet the enemy where you want to and not waste time. So then you end up swapping to Lucio, and then you could have had beat and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's not a bad comp. It's solid. It's you just don't always need it. It's defensive, called defensive brawl for a reason. So like on King's Row, you can definitely play it because you're not going to end up getting hit by loads of flanks. You can counter Lucio brawl play just by having stuns, having good sustain heals, having whip shots to move people around, having rallies to act as your aggression when you choose to do that, to catch the enemy off guard, or your anti-push to sustain mid-fight. Yeah, like the only reason why the Brig BAP would work on Icon World Second is because Icon World Second is like a little mini King's Row. You're playing linearly. Yes, there are two sides to it, but you can just play it the same way. You can just sit on point and play it like King's Row First, where you sit on point. You don't really sit on point on King's Row First. You do other stuff and play and aggress and stuff like that. But yeah, play it as a defensive brawl. What would help now? What? I've been helpful.
Nothing much other than that. Like, my shot calls mid-game are never the issue. It's always just the start of the game. I feel like I come up with a comp and like 4 people contradict me, and they're like, "No, we're doing." And like, see, yesterday, I think it was yesterday. Goomba actually said things once or twice. Like, we were on Lijiang Gardens, Lijiang Night Market, and we were holding right door at point. And I said, right guys, don't back up too far, don't give them too much space. And then Goomba said, back to point, and everyone fucked off, back to point. And I'm like, do I exist? I feel like every time I say something, there's always one person that's like, no, let's do this, or no, we're doing this, or no, we're going to play this.
Yeah, that's on them.
And sometimes I do have to say, listen, shut up, I'm the shot caller, speak to me about it after the game, do what I tell you now, and then if you want to be pissed off and swing at me later, do it, but right now, do what I tell you. And Goomba said to me after the map, that's my bad, and I'm like, yeah, you kind of have to listen to me, and he's like, yeah, that's my bad, and that actually cost us a game, because we had our highest ult was 47%, they had 4 ults, if we held the choke, we could have built up halfway to 3 ults. By the time we backed up and they pushed choke, we would have built up Kree and Zarya. So it's just sometimes I feel like
you can never say how things would have gone. You can only
no, I know, but I just feel like
how things do go. So in that situation, yes, that was the wrong thing to do. You should listen to a shot caller. So next time when that situation comes up, now we know. Well, now we should have known the whole time. But now the scenario is okay. Everyone listens to you, and now we'll see how it goes. So does it work? If it doesn't, why? If it did, good. Then now we know what could have happened the first time around. So yeah, but like you can't get too angry at that.
No, I wasn't angry. I was just a little bit disappointed that everyone, because it was him. I said don't back up too far, and immediately as soon as I stopped speaking, he said everyone back to point. And me and Jamie Jamie was like that after the map. Goomba, what the fuck? Me and DH exclusively told us not to go back, and he just said it, and everyone followed him, and I'm like, the fuck.
You just got to be the bigger. Well, yeah. After it, he knows. So if he's a decent player, he'll think, last time I did this, let's not do that again. So it also comes down to trust. So the more you play with each other, the more it falls in line, and people listen to you more, I guess, just because they've been playing with you more. Not that they shouldn't actively be trying to do it in the first place, but you can't. Sometimes it can't be helped. And then, like for example. It was good from PG actually. The last scrim I was at, he was going very aggressive on Ryan, you were telling him to get back, and then after it he said he was like and then after he was like, I could have killed that Ryan. And I was like in my head, well, good, you might be angry, but you listen to him. So regardless
Exactly.
of whether you could have killed that Ryan, you listen to your shot caller. So
And
that's what matters to
there
me.
were also a few issues with who was it? Goomba on Rhine yesterday on Lijiang was not fruitful because he was playing Rhine like a ball sometimes.
Oh yeah.
So we were last second point Hanamura, and he charged Zarya, picked her, and
Who's your off tank?
we were running. Matt was off tank, but we were running Reina Risa top left.
Because you didn't have a main tank with you. Oh, you're running Ryan Narissa, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And what happened?
Which map?
Hanamura second. We're running Reina Risa, Bat Brig with
That defense.
McCree May. Yeah, defense.
Okay.
And basically, on the bridge, he pinned the Zarya full charge. He got the pick. McCree was running away at the window. Hans was running away one. He dropped down, got flashbang fanned the hammer. They pushed the point,
Yeah.
and I had to pop beat, and I popped beat on 3 HP and saved the point. And he did something like that at least 5-6 times. And at one point I said to him, "Get back" 5 times before he actually listened. So sometimes like people are just completely playing out of position and they don't listen to me. I mean, Matt has a serious problem with like peeking double hit scan and just getting headshot, and I'm like, Matt, get back, and he's like, no, I'm fine. And then he's playing Zarya with no bubbles, no team, no health, and he gets picked, and then we're staggered. So it's just little micro arguments that people do, and I'm like, well, you shouldn't be arguing about that. I mean, half of it's common sense and half of it's just doing as you're told.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'll just say don't get.
I never get angry with them. I never get angry with them.
Yeah.
I do just get annoyed when it's some things maybe cost as a fight, some things cost as a map, and it's just stuff that we should know better as a team because we are better than that. I know we are.
Everyone's got something to improve on. I do think being an off-tank player, that is a for some reason every role has a sort of commonality of things they do well and things they don't do so well. I think off-tank lends itself a lot to that sort of mentality and playstyle. That's what The thing is, playing the off-tank, I was aware, not always, but I was aware that stuff like that can happen, so you just need to catch yourself before you end up doing stuff like that. Or have the confidence to know in yourself that it can work, but then also not fundamentally jeopardize the team because of how you're playing at the same time. So every role's got something like that. So I'm not surprised that you said those two names and that that's an issue. But they should be. It's not like, I don't know, if it's the thing with Goomba where he knows that he messed up, then next time you can expect him to not do that, and if he does do that, then that's when it becomes an issue. The first time around, it's not an issue. It's practice. If that makes sense. So is an issue, but it's not like
the biggest issue is just people arguing.
Now, you know, like.
Well, I've done it. I think yesterday was my 3rd time shot calling, and it wasn't like a 2-on 2-off. I did all 4 maps. So I think I've shot called 9 out of our last 12 maps. So the biggest problem, that's like a small problem, is just people arguing. So like if I say a comp and then Mayo is the only one that's actually ever talked back to me like that and given a good suggestion. We're on Iconville defense, 2nd round, and he said, "Why don't we run a spam brawl?" And I DC'd and I came back and I said, "Yeah, let's run spam brawl." And it didn't work as well as I said, "Yeah, sure," but I was hesitant. But I thought it was a good idea. It wasn't a great idea. In my heart, I knew it wasn't a good idea, but Mayo was headstrong on it, so I thought, why not? The comp I wanted to run would have worked a lot better because it would have been more stable, but everyone was so confident in my own idea. I was like, right, okay. But
as a shot caller, it's good to also balance, because you're often unfortunately the person that gets. It's a double-edged sword. So you're either getting praised for how well something went, or you're getting beaten up because of how poorly it went. It could have been someone completely different, but because you're the one calling the shots and how people are moving and
Well, I'm calling
everything like
shots.
that first
I'm
couple games.
calling shots about 65% of the time at the moment.
Hmm.
Which isn't good. It's just people butting in and like I understand like sometimes someone will give a shot call and it'll be like the odd thing from
Right.
Jono or PG. I'm like, right, yeah, that's kind of their job. They pitch in because Jono's experienced and PG is
Right.
also trained as a shot caller. That's fine. But when people like Jammy, not Jammy, but I don't think Jammy's ever actually did it, but like just like Matt will pitch in with something completely fucking random that completely contradicts something we've said, and we're like, well,
Right.
we all like I said push in, and the DPS like yeah push in. Then someone will say no, back out, this that and the other, and I'm like, why are
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
saying
Yeah.
that if everyone else is saying the opposite? And he's like, oh, I'm sorry, and I'm like, well, don't be sorry, just learn in your head that if the team says something and if I say something, don't say
Yeah.
something that's completely and diametrically opposed to it, because it just confuses
Right.
the team rather like more than anything.
Yeah. Fine. If it's I mean, it just sounds like team play in general and people playing and not seeing, slowly improving. I think overall, you guys have been playing positively or like better every scrim, so you've all got something to be learning and checking up on. If it's ever an issue, like, or you need help with anything, then like this, you come to me and I say stuff, because at the end of the day, if you, after the first or second time, even third max time of trying to tell someone to stop doing something that they're doing, after that, they should have stopped after the first time, and then I come in, and if they're still doing it, then it's it's a gone moment.
Mhm.
Like, are you prepared to leave? Because if you're not going to improve on that, you know. Anyway, I would just say make sure you're doing what you're doing correctly. Focus less on what other people are doing. Pick up on it when other people have messed up. Watch for it when you're in another, like say the next map, and whether it happens again or it doesn't, and it didn't because of what happened in the previous map, so they've learned, or whether then they haven't learned, and then you pick them up on it again and say, not mid map, but and then if it's a long-term issue, then I can do something about it. But I'm sure it can be frustrating.
Mhm.
Anyway, I'm confused by your schedule. Do you actually have any scheduled
No,
scrims?
Pancake said he'd be busy at some point this week, but I assumed Oakley or you would be finding scrims.
Uh-huh. I
Uh,
didn't know, so...
he actually he posted it in the chat, one of the chats, and I'm sure you responded saying okay, no
Did I?
worries or some bullshit. Someone definitely responded to him. He said he'd be busy on Sunday this week and he was doing stuff throughout the week, and then you or Oakley or something responded saying okay, no problem. But I assumed Oakley would be finding scrims in his absence.
That's
So
strange.
well, Oakley did message today saying day off, but I don't know if that was because it was like 5 minutes before 5 minutes to 7,
Yeah,
or whether
I did
he,
see that.
you know. I mean, I'm always happy to try and find scrims, but I don't want to find a scrim and then it turns out today was supposed to be an off day, or you had already found something, or Oakley found something. But I'm always on the lookout for scrims.
Hmm. Oh, T2 have a new
Main tank.
main tank player. That's fun. They don't need it. I had a chat with Logan before I joined with you, just to see how T2 is going. I think
Realist.
they always say they're good, but they always have stuff that fundamentally needs help with, but I just let them do it.
Yeah,
They always say they're okay, so it is T2 after all.
true.
I don't know what else I can really go over. Like also, making comms, doing strats discussions is helpful. Like with the team, so like discussing what works on what maps and what else, because you can have someone tell you what to play on each map and that's fine, but without chatting with the people that play the other components of your comms, there might be a better way of playing it, or it might be a different way you want to play it because it just hasn't been working, but you need to discuss it. So I do regular-ish strat discussions with T2. It is just going into a lobby and going into, I don't know, yeah, similar things like with Icon World and being like, okay, so what what works well here, what doesn't, and then people just have a chat about it.
So
Then
who
make a call
schedules
about
strat discussions? Is it you? Is it Oakley?
Well, it should be Oakley. I think he's too busy.
Yeah,
I'll
we've
try
never
and
had
see
one.
if
We've only ever had we've had 2 VOD reviews with Robo, and that's about it. Which are usually a bit on and off because he usually has a PowerPoint, but it's usually very laggy, and I feel like he goes over the same thing a few times. But it's
Yeah.
good. Robo's good.
Yeah, I've heard very positive things from him, from what I've heard, so, which is good. Rover's been with us for a long time. He's in finals, I think, of
Yeah.
Shockwave with his team. I'm sure he'll do well. He's also got a good head on him because of what he plays. He's main tank, so main tank shot caller, so he generally knows a decent amount about the game. Because of the position he's in. Like I would listen to you. I wouldn't hugely trust the hit scan player, for example.
Yeah.
Like if they were making my comp. Really depends on the person, but right. Anything else that would help you with stuff?
No, I think it's just, cutting back on arguing and talking back, questioning, more on, I feel like people sometimes lose focus midway through the game, just little bits and bobs, but I mean, after probably another 2 or 3 scrims, I think we should be solid. I don't know what games we have coming up. I mean, we're not in Shockwave or Element anymore, I don't think, are we? Are we still in Element?
I don't know. We were. It's really a shame that they started like a week earlier than when you and the other tryouts joined, because we probably would have done quite well. But if I'll have a look to see if I think we were knocked out of Shockwave. I think that happened.
Yeah, we were knocked out of Shockwave, but there's still a week 3 schedule posted for there was a schedule posted in Element yes on the 1st. It was on Monday, and it was Division 3.
Oh yes, we're
week
still
3.
in Element. I know that. Yes, I knew that we were still in Element, because I'm pretty sure Oakley's trying to schedule a day with the team we're versing. So.
Is it not Lightning? I think it's Lightning.
I'll have a look. Or maybe I can't see it because of the role I've got. Rosters.
Division 3 schedule. Yep. Elemental Esports Division 3 Week 1.
Underrated
week 2.
esport is week 3, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Lightning was last week, unless if week 2 is this week. I don't think it is.
Did we play Lightning last week? I do not remember. I don't know. We played Limerence 2 weeks ago. Was it 2 weeks or was it last week? When was it? I'll be able to check when it was. The Twitch stream should still be up.
Oh,
1 week ago. Yeah, we played Limerence a week ago.
okay, so then it is Lightning.
Yeah, it must be.
Must be. How is team? Well, you've told me a bit about team dynamics, but overall team dynamics, other than people not listening sometimes, which is always going to happen.
Fine. I mean, there was a major issue yesterday that cost us Hanamura pretty much. It was on attack, and I think Joseph was May and Jamie was Sim, I think. Yeah, and we tried to. I must have said it 4 times. TP to the rim of the building, push through top left window, and instead, what happened was we TP'd to the stairs at the front of Choke, and Jamie walled me off from the point, and I got charged by the Reinhardt.
Okay.
And
Why? Did you not have Oakley?
Oakley was main tank. No, that was the game where we had Matt and Goomba. So we ran. I think we ran a Lucio Lucio Bap or a Lucio Moira. We ran the Rhine, the Zarya, and then the Sim and the Mei.
I wouldn't be too bothered about that because you've got 2 off tanks playing, and Jamie is not a Mei player. So
well, to be
he'll probably convince you that he is.
Well, it was either the no, it was Jamie on the Sim and Joseph on the Mei because Joseph was the proj.
That sounds about right.
And we fucked it up so bad, and I don't know how. And we held our own on the point as long as we could, but I mean, I don't honestly know how because he must have sat there for about 4 seconds before he TP'd. So I honestly don't know how he messed it up, and I don't know how we messed the wall up. So probably cost us the point.
Joseph doesn't ever really play. If you had Oakley there on the day, you would have been playing Oakley.
Yeah. Well, Oakley was
Joseph
there, but he was on
he
was on the bench.
Oh, okay. You should have played Oakley if you wanted to play him.
I think Oakley insisted on Joseph
be
playing.
Able to play it, say if Oakley's not there, but I wouldn't be too bothered about that. You just play it next time and see how it goes next time around. You've all experienced it when it goes wrong, so unless if people are either ignorant or just sadistic about playing with their team, they'll want to not repeat it the next time round, so they'll try and improve for it. Don't know what happens when it goes wrong and how it goes wrong, so yeah, one time around thing really doesn't bother me too much. You play the sim, at least what I've watched, well. Did you win that point or not? You lose it?
We lost by 25 seconds. We both got 3-3 and we lost by... Oh no, did we? No. Am I thinking of the right one?
Hamura, I'm saying.
What am I thinking? We lost it? Did we?
I mean first point on that attack. Did you take the point?
We capped it with very, very little time. I think we had like 15 seconds left, if anything. Because we swapped off the sim and we just went to the... I think we went to the Widow and something else, and we just tried to push the choke, and it took us too long, and we were really flustered. And Jamie had a bit of an attitude there, I think, because I told him to go McCree initially, and he was like, "Why the hell am I going McCree? Oh, fine." And then he got picked off once. He was like, "Can I go Widow now?" And I was like, "Right, fine, go Widow. You'll get some value." But just bits and bobs like that, like people having attitudes. And on the topic of like attitude, but not really attitude, Mayo. He's been a bit off lately, and I don't know whether that's affecting his ability to play or not. Just because the last 2 scrims we've been out with him, he's quiet, moody, kind of dull,
moody sounding.
Yeah.
And I'll have a word with him about
just
that.
Because like if Husey showed up, we can always swap them in. But Husey's been up to one scrim, and it was the Raider scrim that we cancelled on them because they were being arrogant.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I don't really know why he hasn't been binned yet.
He said it's college work, but every day that I've been on for scrims and stuff, he's playing Dead by Daylight and Siege. So he's on even before we got on.
Like even still, even if it was college work and he couldn't make it, even still, I'd rather have consistent players than I'm not saying he's a god tier player.
He's not.
Have consistent players than good players. So,
and even at that, like I don't even think he's as good. Not that he's a bad player, but I just think Mayo's not only is Mayo the better support, but I feel like Mayo's more consistent. If he's just having a moody day, fine. But I'd rather just have Mayo having a bad day than have Husey not turn up.
No, that's fair. I know Mayo does that too often, so I'll talk to him about it.
It's not like a major issue if he's just having a bad day.
He's not. Yeah, it is often that he's having a bad day. He's quite, let's say, emotional person, so he can let those things get to him. And I do say to him, you can't. Yeah, you can feel like that, but you can't let that affect you, or try not to let that affect your gameplay. Yeah. Play for the others, not for yourself. So, yeah.
And I also
I know what you're talking about.
I also do think I should bring this up on the subject of unreliable supports, and considering I'm the only main support, I think maybe we should do like, even if it's just 1 scrim a week, have me and Mayo swap roles. so he's main and I'm flex support. I'll still be shot call and he'll still be target alt tracker, but swap the roles surely because if for whatever reason I can't play main support or I can't be there or whatever,
Mm.
and Mayo said multiple times he loves playing Brig, he's very comfortable on Brig. Maybe we should
Mm.
train him as a Brig. He doesn't want to play Lucio, which is fine, but if we train him as like a maybe a Brig or a Mercy player,
He can play it, so it's not a bad idea. It's just the only issue would be it wouldn't be the lack of having a main support fill there. Maya can do that. He was a main support.
yeah.
Not that he wants to play the Lucio, but I know he can. It would be the shot caller. So
Well,
I don't think you can do that if you want. Go ahead. It's not
but
a bad
just
idea.
it's
If you
just
can
like
keep them
obviously like things like Matt. Obviously
active.
he's one, but he's playing both. He's like a flex tank tryout, and him and
Yeah.
Goomba have played both. So have LGD. I've played Anna, but he played Brig on the high ping. I've seen Hitscans play Proj play Hitscan. I think it's nice to have people have backups in case because I don't foresee Husey coming to any other scrims, and we don't have another support tryout.
Yeah,
So
yeah. We should be getting is don't come up with it's not a bad idea. Just don't come up with solutions by yourself. You can always ask me and say like, users not turning up. We need worried about availability for whatever reason these days. We're not gonna have enough supports. Let's get another tryout. Like, well, we can do that. So,
mhm.
um, if it were me, maybe I would. It would be a bad thing. But I'd be a lot more hands-on with some of the stuff in the teams. But it's not
Yeah.
my job to do that. If I were, then I'd be seen more as meddling than anything. But
Well, it's Oakley's job, so I mean, it's all down to
yeah,
him. I mean, I'm always like looking and looking for T. I'm always in LFT and LFS just in
yeah,
case Oakley or Pancake has issues or some bullshit. And I've always got,
yeah,
but I mean, I trust them to manage the team as well as they have done.
yeah. I mean, they're good at it. They know what they're doing. So sometimes I feel like they slack a little, but
Well, yeah.
it does.
I mean, I'll be on the lookout for a new flex support if we can find it. But I mean, I don't
Yeah.
think we need one, but it might be nice to have one in the bank.
You probably don't need one. Like if you and Maya are consistent enough players and you turn up for 5 out of 7 scrims a week, you don't have 7 scrims, let's say 5 out of 6 scrims a week, it's not a huge issue.
Mhm.
It's for that one day where you're not there that
I
it
mean,
kind of matters, or a league game where something comes up and you just can't make it.
yeah, the only reason I would not turn up to a Scrimmer League game is like a immediate kind of emergency, like can't be
Yeah.
changed.
No, but that's reasonable. Like even if it wasn't can't be changed, not can't be changed. What's the word? What am I saying? You've got something scheduled, and it's a pain to reschedule it, or you're just booked. Like there's nothing wrong with that. As long as you can turn up to the minimum 4, I still think 4 is quite low for a good team, but yeah, a minimum 4 scrims a week. As long as you can still turn up to them, it's not a big deal. Everyone's got life to do. So, East community, Nixies community. I think I'm very happy with where everything's at though.
Hmm.
In general, it's good that you are. Don't be too critical, because the not distance. How far T3's come within 1.5 weeks really is very very promising. So good to be critical, because then you keep looking for things to improve on, but don't put yourself down.
Hmm.
And
I mean,
yourself down for anything too.
I think we've drawn the last 2 scrims, but to be honest, we should have won them, and we played like we should have won them. And I told them after every map, I was constantly just telling them we should have won Lijiang easily, we should have won Hanamura fairly easily. We won the other 2 maps, but it should have been a 4-0. Last night's scrim should have been a clean 4-0, no problem.
Right.
But things like people not listening, people arguing back, playing too far forward, being scared to use ults, just little things are costing us. But I keep telling them they're playing good, but I think some of them refuse to believe it because we lost or we drew. But I'm constantly telling them.
Well, it's a good thing. I can't say much more about all of it. I think it's overall solid. Yeah, some strats discussions would probably help you guys out.
Yeah, definitely. I have said that to Oakley, and he said it's a good idea, but I assumed it was him. It's his kind of job to kind of allocate time for that.
Yeah, he's the only thing with Oakley is that I wish he was a bit more hands-on than he is. But he's how old is he? 18 now? 18 or
No,
19?
he's younger
He's
than he's 17, is he not? I'm pretty
he's
sure.
got a full-time job basically. So he's busy all day and then gets home and just wants to relax and then goes, ah, wait, I have to do some captaining stuff.
Well, I mean,
Not that he can't do it. It's just
I have said to Oakley that sometimes I do feel like some things that need to get done don't get done, and I'm like, well, I can help out if you ever need me to, but I feel like that may be overstepping a little bit. I'm not saying I want to do it. I'm saying if there's ever the dire moment
the
where he's struggling, like I can do one or two things, like if he's
yeah
really in need.
the good thing is that normally Oakley and Tom are a relatively good team because Tom is the person that picks up on those things that you've said. So he will say the stuff, the small stuff that doesn't get done straight away or when it needs to. So they work well. If it becomes an issue, then I'll sort something out at a later date. But right now it's okay. Other than the scrim thing, I don't
Yeah.
know. But then I did just look. I didn't see Pancake say anything, so I went through the history. So I don't know about that. What's happened with scrims this week? Oh well, shit happens.